Hi, this is Carolyn, and I'm going to share my process for the big jelly print assemblages that I've been making. I had a previous video in which I showed you the building blocks, but in this one I'll be showing you the process. I'll be making two. The first one to give you the big picture, and then in the second half I'll be making a second one with more of the details. So you can see that I've laid out the elements that I have cut on a piece of paper that's about the same size as the jelly plate I'm going to print from. I'm choosing to put them down on the opposite side because I want the elements to look exactly as they do in the practice collage, but you don't have to do that. You can just put them straight above and things are on the other side. Doesn't really matter a whole lot. The blue that you see underneath here is on the bottom of the jelly plate. On the other side it's a piece of paper that's under there, so we don't have to pay any attention to that. So here I am putting those painted pieces upside down onto the jelly plate. And here's another fun thing you can do. You can draw onto a piece of paper with dry chalk pastel and then rub that onto the jelly plate behind these collage elements, and they will show up as some interesting differences behind the collage. Here I'm putting a pearlescent blue from Craftsmart, just a very inexpensive paint. You can use all kinds of paint. I find that fluid paints work better for this particular situation because they roll much more easily. The paints from the tube tend to be a little pasty and sometimes stick to the paper a little bit too much. Conversely, these may wet your paper too much. So some of the collage elements are from cardboard, some are from tissue. So you'll have to work out which ones are best for the kind of paper you're using. When you saw me making the 4-layer prints, I added water to the paint to make it a little more fluid, but you can't do that now because you need the glue quality of the acrylic paint. So I use a little thinner paint and a little bit more so that I have some time to actually create a good layer behind the collage, because that's what's going to glue it to the pickup paper. This is a little bit of a delicate procedure. The papers sometimes stick to the roller. When they're wet, they'll wrinkle a little bit. You have to play with it a little bit and be patient. That's one good reason to have the fairly wet and fairly fluid paint. So when you're ready to pick it up, you'll want to center your paper on the jelly plate. I'll show you a little later in the second round of this for the second print how I do that. And when I feel confident that it's all ironed on and pressed on and it's made contact everywhere, I flip over the jelly plate. As you can see here, I flipped it over so that I can see if I've got everything, and so that when I pick up the plate, I can clearly see that I've got a good print. You can see the plate is completely clean. Well, very little ghosting there, but nice and clean, nice and loose. The print is dry, and the acrylic paint has glued the collage pieces onto the paper. And here's this pretty nice result. So I'm adding in some footage that you've already seen in some of the other videos, but I'm pulling everything together here. If you have a look at that Recycle Your Jelly Print video, you can see this component where I showed you how you can use your jelly prints that didn't work out to create sort of collaged monoprints. So we're putting the jelly printed pieces right onto the plate. And this is an infinite process. You can just keep recycling your jelly prints till you get assembled or collaged jelly prints that you like. You can see on the right side there, I am covering that jelly plate with some matte medium, and then I'm going to turn these elements upside down onto the plate, or sometimes like this, just lay the plate on top so I can see what's going on, and the medium will stick to those pieces, and then I can just pick it up and flip it around, take the piece of paper off there, and you'll see that the pieces are securely stuck to the jelly plate. At this point you can add some more. You can even move them around a bit because they're wet. You can pick them up and put them down again. And then you can play with some other elements like the dried chalk scribbles, or you can do some Posca pen behind there, or print with some print materials, buttons or egg cartons or corrugated board. You can do all kinds of fun things here. What you see here is just rubbing some drawing made with dry chalk pastel onto the plate behind the collage elements. You can see the interplay of elements there, and then when you're all done, you can pick it up with your acrylic. I find that fluid paints that are, especially fluid paints that are translucent, work really well. And you can see the collage here, and these are the elements that we end up using for the bigger assemblage pieces. And there are a number of examples here that were fun to make. They're all very, very different. This is just a very loose and creative, intuitive part of the process, making these collage pieces. And these are the collages and pieces that you end up cutting for the larger assemblage compositions. Of course, you can think about it differently and regard these all as a continuing process. You're just going bigger and bigger. You can go more intentional or more abstract in the compositions. So there you are. Those are the elements that I'm taking forward. So let's go through a second one. Now you know how the elements are made, and we'll go through this a little slower with a little more detail. So I've transferred those elements to the plate, and then choosing to transfer some of the chalk pastel drawing behind them. And to do that, you can also just put the pastel drawings onto an old jelly print. A big part of this process for me is recycling and reusing, and that is actually even one of the reasons it came about, because I didn't know what to do with all the material I'd compiled. These last few prints I have made on some nice printmaking paper, maybe part of the learning process, maybe old habits die hard. I thought I needed quality materials, but the last few I've been making right onto recycled paper out of my recycling bin, like pieces of newspaper, old ads. I have a roll of craft paper, and all of that works just as well. In case you want to align or register your prints, let me show you how I do it. I measured as much as I need up and as much as I need down. So for me it was, 18 by 24, 16 by 20. I think it was 2 inches on one side, one going up. And I made myself this little template so I could put a dot in each corner. And then when I put the jelly print onto the jelly plate, I use the corners to locate the plate underneath the paper, and it's centered. Here you can see again using a very fluid paint. This time, instead of putting it onto the jelly plate, onto the work, I'm putting it onto a smaller jelly plate beside my work and rolling it onto my brayer and then onto the art. And that seems to work even better because I'm getting a really nice cover and I don't have to roll back and forth as much, and so I'm not lifting my papers. It works particularly well, I suppose, because I have those little thin pieces that look almost like stems. So they're sticking to the plate fairly nicely to the medium that I put on there first, and then I can just roll over them like this. If you're wondering about the medium, I put that on the plate first to keep the whole print really, really smooth on the top layer. When it's built or turned over, you can run your hand over it and it's very smooth. Again, have a look at the what to do with all those old jelly print reel, because I show you there. I make a small 8 by 10 pile of stones and use this method. This is a huge jelly plate. This works really well on 8 by 10 jelly plates too, of course. And I started making the small ones first because you can get a handle on it. Small is a better way to start. So here you can see me aligning the paper on top of the plate. Watch where my thumbs are. They're on those dots that I drew with my little template. So you can see my thumbs find the corners of the jelly plate underneath those dots, and because I'm working diagonally, it's always going to line up. So there it is, and I can see through the plate, see if I like it, see if all the paint covered correctly, and so on. And I can see it straight. And you know, all of that is important, because if you can't see it, then you wonder and then you pull it up too soon. So here it is being pulled up, and the plate is totally clean. The print has dried underneath, the paint has set, and the collage pieces are stuck to the paper. And you get a beautiful collage or assemblage or print, whatever you want to call it. You can see here on the left side that it's peeled up a little bit and hasn't set correctly. That may be a function of me thinking about doing the reel at the same time as I'm doing the art. Here's another one that I tried then again for the purpose of showing you how to do it, and this one turns out perfectly. So that's fun, and I show you a few more as we finish off. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, follow the reels, look for more, stay tuned, and if you have questions, write them in the comments below. I always answer. And share your work on the Facebook Learn Gelli Plate Printing group.